Hey guys, it's Nailbiter, and I've got another World of Tanks commentary here. I know usually when I post these World of Tanks videos, a lot of the time I'm playing medium tanks or I'm talking about how to play medium tanks, but I wanted to post this video because I think it does a good job showing what kind of effect you can have when you play aggressively in a heavy tank, and especially a heavy tank that has a decent amount of armor. So this is just a quick round with the IS-4 on Stalingrad. The IS-4 is a tank that I haven't played a ton of. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I've been playing it a little bit more recently, so I've been getting more comfortable with it. Now, obviously, being aggressive is situational. You don't want to be aggressive, even if you have a really super heavily armored tank like the Mouse. You don't want to be aggressive in every single matchup. It depends a lot on what the teams look like and what map you're playing. So just looking at the teams right off the bat here, obviously there's no artillery on either side. And so anytime you see that in a heavy tank, it's usually a pretty good indication that you can get away with a little bit more than you might otherwise. There also are only 4 top tier tanks on each side. So there are going to be a fair number of lower tier tanks, and in a top tier heavy tank with a decent amount of armor, that also usually means you can be a little more aggressive, you can bully more tanks, and it's going to be harder for some of the tanks that you face to actually pen your armor. On Stalingrad in particular, you usually have 2 pretty well-defined flanks where the 2-3 line is where most of the heavy tanks and maybe the bigger TDs will go. Stuff with more armor is usually going to brawl it out on the 2-3 line, and the 8-9 line is where you see most of the medium tanks and light tanks go. So since I'm in the IS-4, I'm going to go to the 2-3 line, and looking at the team compositions, you'll notice that my team has a lot more armor and HP, especially at the top tier, than the enemy team. The enemy really only has the E-100 as a super large heavy tank. The other 3 tier 10 tanks they have are medium tanks. So I'm expecting to really only have to deal with the E-100 on the 2-3 line. Of course, the medium tanks could go to the 2-3 line. It's something that I do want to watch out for, but I definitely want to pay attention to when and where they get spotted. But I'm assuming that really the only major resistance that I'm going to encounter on this side is the E-100. So we spot him pretty early here, and he's playing pretty far back. I stopped briefly there to see if I could get a shot, and already a light tank has been spotted on the other side. And the fact that the E-100 is playing so far back suggests to me that he doesn't have a ton of support. So I'm going to push up here. The 703 is pushed up as well, which is good. It's good to see him playing aggressively, and already looks like all of the scouts have been spotted on the other side on the enemy team, and a medium tank and an M103. Now 2 of the scouts are also in a platoon with one of the tier 10 medium tanks, and it looks like one of them has just been spotted. So at this point it's looking like most of the enemy's presence is on the 8-9 line. So I'm going to push up and engage this E-100. Now there's no artillery, so I can kind of just sit here in this gap. I don't have to worry about getting shot, and I just want to engage him. The IS-4 has great side armor, and so if you can get enemies to shoot at that, especially if they're shooting heat rounds, you'll usually bounce those shells. So I get a shot into the lower plate of the E-100, and he bounces his heat round off my side. And now, again, if you look at the mini-map, there's a lot of enemy tanks on the other side, so I really want to push the issue with this E-100. I want to try to take him out as quickly as possible. He doesn't have any support, really. And so I should be able to finish him off pretty quickly, especially with the backup that I have. I do have a couple of heavy tanks that have come with me, which is good. We have some TDs who are kind of hanging back and not being very useful, but we managed to push up and kill this E-100 pretty quickly. Now, I could pursue that E-75, but I know I have teammates behind me who should be able to deal, and he's already dead, no problem. So it's not really worth going after him. Now I'm going to cut across because really our only risk at this point is getting overmatched on the 8-9 line. So I want to use my HP and armor to make sure that doesn't happen, and I'm still full health, so I'm really at no risk of getting killed. So I'm just going to drive straight across here and make it so the enemy can't ignore me. You can see the other tanks that were on the 2-3 line with me are also starting to move to the east, and the idea here essentially is to prevent the enemy from being able to keep pushing down the 8-9 line and take out the remaining tanks that we have. Because even though we do have a lot more map control than the enemy at this point, the tank count is still pretty close. It's 4-4, so we still need to be careful. So my goal is to just push into the enemy and force them to engage me, essentially. And I'm relying on the fact that being top tier and having a decent amount of armor, I'll be able to hold up for a little while. So I saw that this Lorraine had shot 3 times, and even though I knew he had some shells left, I figured I'd be able to bounce at least one of them. So I pushed around the corner anyway. I did take a little bit of extra HP, or a little extra damage there, but it's not a huge issue, and it looks like we're already in pretty good shape on this side. With the IS-4, you want to, as best you can, force the enemy to shoot your sides. The lower plate is actually pretty weak, but if you can hide that and go hull down, it can be a very difficult tank to penetrate. So I've forced this T-62 to back off, and I can just side scrape these corners pretty much, and he's going to have a lot of difficulty actually being able to pen me. But obviously, I mean, we've been pretty successful in what we wanted to do. We forced the 62 to engage us. The M103 is putting cap pressure on, so he's forced the 704 to go all the way back and deal with him. And the enemy is pretty spread out. They can't group together and push on it and get an overmatch on us. And I'm managing to occupy both this 140 and 62 at the same time. And my armor has been holding up pretty well so far. I'm staying kind of side scraping on this corner and showing or exposing very little of my lower plate. And so this 140 is having trouble penning me, and the 62 doesn't have any good shots on me either. So I finished off the 140, and now the game is pretty much over. It's just a matter of cleanup. So I mean, really a pretty quick round, and a lot of, I guess the point of this replay was to show that kind of pre-game analysis and what you want to be thinking about when you're playing a heavy tank, because usually that can determine how aggressive you can play. And when you play aggressively in a situation like this, you can have a pretty solid game. So I ended up doing, as you can look at the post-game stats here, I ended up actually getting an ace tanker in this round, even though it was a pretty quick game, and I did only just under 5,000 damage. I did get a steel wall, so my armor held up pretty well, almost 3k blocked. And usually the way I feel with heavy tanks is you want to be in the mix and sort of the brawls. And so if you're not taking damage, if you're not taking hits, then you're probably not playing your tank as it's supposed to be played. So I felt like overall this was a pretty solid round, and hopefully it gave you a sense of the advantages of playing a heavy tank aggressively in the right situation. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.